Mario Maker was a pretty good idea, all things considered. Back in 2013, I enjoyed the thrill of downloading a Kaizo level off of a website that sells the same substances its creators were using. Then Nintendo brought that straight to your doorstep. Then Moon made a lot of money. Behavior saw that and said, that's a great idea. What if it was boring to look at and unsatisfying to play? Meet Your Maker is a first-person shooter where all of the levels are made by other players. There's two roles to play, Raider and Maker. The Raider goes into the base, destroys traps and enemies while balancing their single hit point, while Makers create a single hallway and jam in as many traps as possible. I have no idea how Meet Your Maker is going to do, though maybe my tone betrays me. It's missing a lot of the human element that makes online games fun. Technically, people make the levels, but that's pretty hands-off. It's satisfying to know your base is out there frustrating people, but you'll never hear that frustration. You'll never see the light fade from their eyes as they disconnect. You can play with a friend, but that's about it. One friend. Maybe that's a reply to Behavior's previous work, which is ruined by the fact that its players actually have friends. But it's the start of the rat race now. They're not Dead by Daylight here, they are VHS. It's like you're watching reality TV and some guys are trying to start a fire with tissues, but you know most of them are going to sleep in the cold. A lot of them are going to fail, and you'll check in on the winner a year later only to find out they're taking Mario Kaizo very seriously. I've played Meet Your Maker during the beta and tried to cram in as much time during its opening days. The way the game works is that you have a base in the middle of a desert with an ugly chimera that insists stealing this magic red fluid and feeding it to them will cure humanity from a plague that's decimating it. The red fluid is called genetic material, or GenMat for short. You need to make bases that protect your GenMat, then go into other people's bases to steal theirs. It will then cure the infection, likely in the same way that the fucking Halo ring would. So you bust a base. There's a large menu of them, each in separated tiers, easy, medium, and hard. The first level is stuff people tend to make on a budget, most of which haphazardly thrown together and can have a hole in the plot that breaks the entire thing, medium bases that wish they were hard bases, and hard levels that sink their teeth into your ass because you forgot to check every single possible way this doorway could have unfolded. You have 2 guns mapped to one of the mouse buttons, an armor set with perks, and finally 2 bits of gear. The guns, as they exist right now, rely on an interesting ammo system. Every bolt you fire will end up in the environment, so you need to retrieve it personally. And you aren't going to have a large amount of them. There is a sword which can lunge into a trap to destroy it. This doesn't cost ammo, but it will bounce off of armor. The Raider also comes equipped with a double jump and a grappling hook, so you have a very full range of motion and almost nothing is out of reach. What you lack is fortitude. One shot kills you, leading to a lot of situations where you fire a bolt to get rid of a trap, then grapple to go get it, then see a bunch of sharpened things aimed at you like you're clout farming. If a trap is set off, you have a split second and you'll get an indication on where it's coming from. You really don't need the direction though, as what way is safer than the one you just fucking came from. There's a variety of traps with little modifiers to it. For example, the fire trap spews flames until it's destroyed, while the pistons create small roadblocks. The traps don't trigger faster than you can walk past them. This does mean you open yourself up to the next trap, but if you keep moving, you'll avoid that one too. And Behavior made another game where the best strategy is holding W. There are certain maps where this isn't possible, though you would be shocked by the amount of brutal hallways of death that can be handled with a bit of reckless abandon. What this means is that you play Meet Your Maker in one of 2 ways, extremely slowly or extremely quickly. You're either peeking corners, taking in every detail and trying to remember trap placement for the perfect run, or you're injecting the speed boost, throwing down a second to life, and then watching everything get set off while hoping it's gonna be okay. See, you have infinite tries at the level, but at some point something snaps in you. You're tired of forgetting a tiny trap and starting over. So you start doing the second option and find that it works 10 times better. The secret to playing Raider is in your gear. Grenades can be used to clear out clusters of traps or attack from around a corner, while the Phoenix Pod gives you a free life and the Spike Drive gives you extra speed. There's a push and pull to this that makes it pretty akin to counterplay. Thankfully, every time you respawn, you can swap your loadout. Not to mention that you do have those infinite lives, and you remember traps, so eventually you'll win through the power of determination. The best weapon to me is the Arc Barrier, which grants you a brief second of invulnerability on a cooldown, letting you parry split-second traps that you didn't expect, or you can use it to run through Hellfire in a pinch. It's also how you beat this level. I don't know if you've seen this level, but it is the worst thing in the world. It's a long hallway of pistons that slow your movement, acid to confine you to a single line, and a bunch of claw traps to drag you into that acid. And there's so much of it that you can't blow it up with grenades. You might wonder why I'm showing you this level. Since it's all user-generated, you'd think this would be the only time you'd ever see it. Then I ran into it 3 times, with slight differences, so I know these are by different people. I learned that you need to bring the barrier to survive the pistons, then slash the claws with a sword as they get close. And I don't even know how you would beat it without these 2 bits of gear. I had crashed into this level so many times and had to just turn back, then grind until I had the weapons for it. And when I finally beat the level, I waited for that spark, the "yeah, I'm better," to kick in. And I waited, and I waited, and I never got it. I did not feel better after finishing this. I just felt like I realized how good the arc barrier is. If you're playing a brutal level difficulty, I recommend doing a quick lap around the building itself. A lot of smug motherfuckers will hide an enemy or 2 in the back, record a path so that it waits 30 seconds, then goes into the dungeon behind you. Then you get sandwiched between them and the traps. Or, if you're me, play the level yourself, time the average moment it takes to get to a certain room, hide a bunch of bad guys behind a holographic block, then unleash them at the right moment. You could do these with a friend. I did not do that because I don't have any, and things are pretty bad right now. The benefit of co-op is that you can revive your teammate and you have access to 2 kits. So it's pretty good, honestly. The nature of the game's traps tend to mean that if your friend is dead, you need to venture into the same danger to get them up. If you're about to grab the gen mat and you see a block that looks like this, you're about to get jumped. There's a modifier which allows certain traps to become active after you've collected it, which can turn a relatively quiet base into a massive ambush. If I see something that's very obviously covered in traps, I run up to the gen mat, grab it, throw the thing down and let the traps kill me, then revive after they've all deactivated. Let's talk about the building end of things. Then again, I gave you the whole guide right here, didn't I? Be patient, or not. Look at your gear. So this is the part of the video where it sort of turns. It's not a guide anymore, it's a review, because, well, I think Meet Your Maker is kind of boring. See, that maker part is actually really restrictive, and while there are cunning traps, you're set into building kinda the same thing, a level with a tight set of winding traps or an open combat arena. The reason for that is this fucking thing. The Harvester, or Harvey, or Harvey. Harvey is an NPC that must move on a line between the start of the level and the gen mat. They tried to make him a mascot in that livestream, but I've yet to see him die in a glue trap. Also, I want to say, this game's unveiling livestream had that behavior magic.
In my case, what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to go for a more ranged type of loadout. So
his existence means that there must be a single unbroken line to the objective, which makes a lot of sense because of course someone should be able to reach the objective. Yet that comes at the cost of every single level needing to be completed by Harvey, who does not jump or climb walls, which scratches out a large amount of level variety. There's no mazes, no platforming challenges, no bosses, no stealth. People say this game has Doom energy, but it doesn't. Mario Maker fixes this by forcing you to finish the level. So at least the Kaizo players have to taste their own medicine, and Mario Maker has the tools to draw that creativity out of you. What you're able to build is based on what plot of land you bought. Each one has a score that limits what can be placed inside. You can prestige these levels to increase the limits, but the level is only active for a limited amount of time. I don't know what dictates the time, but mine is only up for around 12 hours, which bums me out. I spent like an hour crafting this menace. The least you could do is grant me a few days, all for some guy to trudge through it and go, that one was brutal. You know, look, I'll stop with the Mario Maker comparison soon, but they should let me at least leave a little note on the level like Nintendo does. I promise, nothing can be more creative than toxicity. Something I found is that you should build with your opponent's resources in mind. The Volt Lance that lets them break your traps can have at most 3 shots, so you want them to fire said bolts far into the room so that they eventually have to go in there and get them. There is a limit to the amount of brands you're allowed to have. For example, you can't have more than 9 kinds of traps, which is fortunate, because at the time of writing, there are 9 types of traps. The game also isn't the nicest to look at. It's following a desert punk vibe, but there's nothing nice to see. Your main room is an assortment of 4 drab people and an abomination that keeps telling you you're doing a good job. Everything else is grotesque metal or brick. So then you boot up the making space and get the wondrous privilege of picking between brown, yellow, or gray. Then every enemy you spawn has to make some hurling noise every few seconds like you're building your base in fucking Woodstock. so by the 4th hour I was already putting the game on mute. You may also enjoy the wondrous fun of booting up your level to see where people died and vacuum up what they dropped. It feels like busy work. You're supposed to take this time to revise and fix your base, though if you're happy with your base, yes, it's busy work. Maybe there's some option that lets you automatically hoover up these resources, because I honestly think it would be too stupid of them not to include it, but I have yet to find it. You can also watch replays of people in your levels if you want to see something not work. The player can't fast forward once without crossing the wires in its brain and freezing the whole thing. On the bright side, Meet Your Maker has pure unfounded potential since it's not drawn to any previously established intellectual property. Sure, everything looks like uninspired grime, but they can make new grime. I could be truly interested in future patches because they can draw ideas from anywhere. They can create boss enemies, traps that teleport you, switches that open locks. The sky's the limit. I just don't know if it's gonna get there. Being a maker is cool, but it's something you set and forget. Dead by Daylight has such an emotional pull to its mechanics. That's what keeps it going. The fact that every player can get invested in what's happening. Who's going to save me? Is the killer playing like a dick? Is this one survivor ruining his entire day? Meet Your Maker, by comparison, just doesn't have that. It's you and a friend trading places, being the first guy to test the next tile. And once a true meta forms, then what? When makers want their bases to dispense resources like it's cookie clicker. This video has been really hard to write because there's just nothing to write home about. I was supposed to make a fucking Last of Us video, but then I pivoted because like, oh, that sounds good. It's just that I can't recommend Meet Your Maker as it is. At least not as a new main game. Maybe if you're loaded and enjoying a nice steak as you watch this video like it's Ramadan, maybe then it's a good idea. Though if you have limited time and money, probably not worth recommending. I hope this game fills the role of a cool creativity-fueled shooter. But it's not too entertaining as it exists. It's not a skill issue, it's a patience issue. The game is as ugly as Mad Max with all the personality sucked out, and I can't wait for them to sell me a pack to fix that. Or I'm gonna take all the money I was going to use on that and spend it on Octopath Traveler 2. Meet Your Maker does have one advantage in that it seems like it's got a good plan. New traps and all that stuff will be added, so maybe in a year or two it'll have grown into something worth your time, like sticking a cotton candy stick into a machine and watching it slowly build up. It really depends on if the support is there, at least to about year 2. The Jerk's review of Meet Your Maker, within the context of April 2023. Not insane enough. I want to get to the point where I feel something again. Pain from a tough level, a rush from jumping between enemies and dodging traps. But if I can't get that here, I think I know a place. Hey, thanks for watching. I'm sorry for the shorter runtime and the lighter editing. I was a bit stumped on my Last of Us video, so I figured that if I just pushed something out, I would start to feel a little better. I would also like to give a big shout out to the people on Patreon who make videos like this possible. I would especially like to thank Mario Fan 997, My Reed, Sir Coffee, Faye Lynn, Jonah Simpson, and Walker. I hope to see you guys sometime soon. And by sometime soon, I mean whatever's on the other side of this door. I think it's my daughter dying in PS5 rendition. Okay, bye!